I'm Paul Cram. Uta Hagen wrote a book in the 1970s, Respect for Acting. It's been on my shelf, not too super long, but it's one of those that I've wanted to read, and I'm finally digging into it. I'm on the last part three, and not quite finished with it yet, but I wanted to jump in and just talk about it a little bit because it's rattling around in my brain, and I'm excited. Uh, when I very first picked up the book, I was so not sure exactly what she was going to get at, where she was at. I was pleasantly surprised in the introduction when she talked about she's not a psychotherapist, she's not a doctor, she's not a counselor. She's an actor and she is a teacher. And she talks about at the time, and I can vouch for this, it's still happening now. But she was saying that there was a lot of acting coaches and a lot of acting teachers and directors that were bringing to the stage people's like traumas, like acting teachers would have students bring up their traumas from the past and like bear them on the stage or bear them in class. And she just was saying, she's like, that's not healthy. That's not the place for that. It's not, it's not healthy, not the place for that is basically what she gets at. She does say, she's like, there are things that you can use, like, sure, sense memory from your past, sure, but only if it deals with stuff that you've like healed from. Otherwise, you're just ripping a wound open, and she's so against that. That's where when I read that in the introduction, I was like, oh yeah, here we go. Like this is going to be someone that I can jive with this. So I've really enjoyed, she starts with the actor in part one, and she really dives into like concepts, identity, emotional memory, the five senses, thinking, walking, and stuff like that. Part two, she goes through object exercises. She talks about like three different entrances that one can do when walking into a scene. Immediacy, the fourth wall, endowment. I love endowment. I think it's a really fun, it's a great way to get where you need to be, where you need to go as a performer. In part three, I'm not all the way through this part yet, but she's talking about character, circumstances, relationships, objectives, obstacles, and history of like the character. Which brings up for me, as I was reading this earlier, I recall there was a film that I was in. This has happened a couple of times, and if people have suggestions, drop a comment. But I'm a character actor, so I oftentimes get cast. The film might already be started, and there's a specific film I'm thinking of, The Soviet Sleep Experiment, where I play a Russian way back when. And the film involves, Russia doing like experiments on its people, and this would have been kind of turn of the century kind of stuff. Again, this might prove my point because I can't remember exactly the time frame for this, but it would have been like in the 1930s, maybe 1940s, something like that. But I get a phone call. I was on vacation in Florida. I got a phone call for this part, and I had 2 days, to like fly back, get my stuff together, and go to set and do a Russian accent. So it was fun. It was quick turnaround, but I didn't have a lot of time to rehearse, or there was no rehearsal really. But I also didn't have time to do a lot of character history and really dig into like who my character was and all those kind of things. And that would have added, I think, a nice layer to that particular role. Do I think that role was okay? I think it was okay. There's just some things there where I was like, oh, there could have been more here. And my accent was all right. It was okay. Yeah, so that would be like an instance where I think a little bit more time, a little bit more rehearsal, and also giving myself like being able to dig into some of the history piece behind and make some choices for my character that could have been slightly more informed rather than me kind of making them up on the fly, which also can be really fun. So it worked out how it worked out. But uh, having rehearsals, I actually just on that note too, like I recently was in a rehearsal with the director, Shelley Nagel, and another actor, and we're getting ready for a shoot that's coming up for a short film called Sunny. It's shooting this spring. And we were rehearsing, and one of the parts for my character, he does some stuff that is pretty par for the course for me, like doing character work. And I kept hitting a mental block with it. I was like, like my motivation just isn't quite there. And it was great because Shelley, the director, did what a good director does, and she was able to help, like, give me some. I like to call them magical, like, what ifs or as ifs. Do it as if, do it as if it's freezing cold, and like do it as if. I'm using some things I've also read from Judith Weston's book, Directing Actors, and do it as if, if you do one thing wrong, you're going to get sent to prison, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll do, it just can inform how your body moves, some of your intentions. But back to Shelley and the short film Sunny, she just gave me some really just this tiny little adjustment, and it like freed up my mental block. And I was able to like push through the rehearsal and find some things that we're going to hopefully use in the film. And Uta talks about that quite a bit too, where it's like, we don't exist in a vacuum. There's a lot of actors where it's like, oh, my process. And I have a process, and everyone has their own process and their own way of doing things. Awesome. Rock on. Nothing against that. Where I like to go, and where Uta's kind of suggesting as well, is it's like it's a group thing though. Like we have to work together. We have to work with directors. We have to work with other actors and like, mold and create and figure things out. Yeah. I love it so much. Have you read this book? Drop a comment if you have, or mention something, or DM me, whatever. Let me know if you've read it, what your thoughts are. I'm always on the lookout for another good read. So if you have a suggestion too that of a good book, acting related or not, drop one down below. I'd love to hear. All right, everybody. I'm going to finish the book, and I probably will have more to say about it too. But until then, I hope you're having a good one. Okay.